So these deportations have caused quite a stir. Recently, they caused a stir with the country of Colombia, where Donald Trump has deported Colombian people that were in the U.S. back to Colombia, only to have that flight rejected by Colombia's president. This sparked a sort of trade war between Colombia and the United States, which we do not want to have. At least I don't, and I'll tell you why. Some of the products that we get from Colombia and why we really actually should be nice to Colombia. But the question is, did Colombia's president cave? Because he started to come back to Donald Trump and he said, no, I'm not going to, accept this flight into our country. Donald Trump threatened, sanctions towards him, and then there were words exchanged. But let's see if those words started to hold. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here from News Nation.
Colombian officials will be in Washington, D.C. today after President Trump's threats of a trade war. Up until late yesterday, Colombia's president refused to accept flights of deported migrants from the U.S. And in response, the president threatened emergency tariffs of up to 50%. Colombia's president ended up caving to Trump's demands and even offered up his presidential plane to help bring those migrants back into his country. News Nation's Robert Sherman is following those developments, is live for us there in Washington, D.C. So, Robert, the president says as long as Colombia accepts its end of the deal, he will not impose these additional tariffs.
Tariffs, sorry, not sanctions. So he was going to impose tariffs on Colombia if Colombia would not accept the plane of migrants that's coming back. Now, for whatever reason, Colombia's president decided to cave. He's backing down. Now, he was talking a good game just a day or two ago, and he was saying that no. Go ahead and try it if you want to, but that's only going to backfire on you, which is true. That wouldn't just hurt Colombia. That would also hurt us because of the goods that we receive from Colombia that we cannot produce in a mass quantity here in the United States. So looks like he's backing down now. This is crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, Nicole, and perhaps this is a sign of what's to come under this administration, as the president has long vowed to use tariffs as a negotiating tool in order to broker the kind of deals that he wants, particularly when it comes to the issue of immigration. That playing out here with the country of Colombia after President Trump and Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia, went head to head on this one particular issue here, with the Colombians saying that they would deny entry of planes from the U.S. carrying Colombian citizens that were being deported back to their home country. The response from President Trump was this. He called emergency tariffs of 25% that would become 50% in a week, as well as travel bans and visa sanctions on the Colombian government and its supporters. After that threat was made, the White House announcing a deal between the two nations had been struck. A statement coming.
So you can see what the threat was here, right? A travel ban, immediate visa revocations on the Colombian government officials and all allies and supporters. You can see here in 1 week, the 25% tariffs will be raised to 50%. So obviously increasing there.
From the White House press secretary reads, quote, today's events make clear to the world that America is respected again. President Trump will continue to fiercely protect our nation's sovereignty, and he expects all other nations of the world to fully cooperate in accepting the deportation of their citizens illegally present in the United States. And as you pointed out here, Nicole, the diplomatic channels and the conversations between Colombia and the United States still ongoing, with those high-level meetings expected to take place between leaders of both nations. Nicole.
All right, so those meetings happening. Robert, where does this leave us in terms of foreign policy and potential future threats of tariffs?
Well, the big thing here, Nicole, is that you've heard two other countries brought up again and again when it comes to the issue of tariffs and immigration. One is Mexico and the other is Canada. And we've heard these threats for months on end coming from the president, and can tell you that from even public comments made by the leaderships of both countries, be that Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, or Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada. They're watching all of this play out very intently. The Canadians have said that they're prepared to respond in any means necessary if tariffs are levied against them, though they believe that they're still an adequate trade partner to the U.S., especially on the front of energy and oil. Mexico says that they're prepared to defend their own sovereignty and protect their own self-interest. But again, everyone watching this all play out very carefully.
Yeah, so very carefully. Obviously, we do not want to have this type of relationship with Mexico either. We do receive our auto parts from Mexico. I don't think people, and I've said it before, we don't produce much here in this country. And I'm going to show you what we receive from Colombia in case you were not aware. And no, I'm not talking about the Coke. This year, coffee, crude oil, and cut flowers. Here are the Colombian goods you may be paying more for under Trump's tariffs. So this is the kicker here, folks. Okay, let's look into some of the things that we do receive from Colombia. If this were to hold, what items would have been hit? Colombia is not one of the U.S. largest trading partners, but steep tariffs could still impact billions of dollars of economic activity. The Office of the U.S. Trade Representative puts total bilateral trade between the U.S. and Colombia at $53.5 billion annually as of 2022. Now, according to this one, petroleum is the largest export of Colombia to the U.S. at roughly $6 billion in 2022. How many of you knew that we receive petroleum from Colombia, right? So see, it's not just the coffee, right? It's not just the coffee. Petroleum, that's a big one. Oil is a two-way trade between the countries, as refined petroleum from the U.S. is the biggest export to Colombia. Here's another one. The second largest export from Colombia was coffee at 1.8 billion. According to the OEC, Colombia accounts for about 20% of coffee shipped to the US and the second largest source of imports after Brazil. Now, that's according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I believe we also get coffee from Africa, different countries in Africa as well. But yeah, I'll get to the coffee part in a minute and explain to you why we can't mass produce that here. And then there's also this issue about how that would affect your drinks. Tariffs on coffee could squeeze Americans who are already having to pay for their drinks. The price of coffee rose 3.8% in 2024, above the overall rate of inflation. So that's a big one. I mean, do you guys want to pay like $20 for a cup of coffee? I know we complained about the Starbucks prices before, but yeah, those are things to think about, right? Like, I don't even drink coffee. I drink tea from the Homebody Club. No, I drink tea. I haven't had coffee in years, which is a good thing, but coffee is not cheap. And I've watched it increase over the years, and just imagine what would happen with the tariffs, right? So flowers. Cut flowers were the third biggest import from Colombia at 1.6 billion. Other items being regularly shipped to the U.S. from Colombia include gold and aluminum structures. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. Okay, no big deal. I'm just not going to buy flowers. There's a lot of florist business in the United States. I mean, here in Boston alone, there's florist shops everywhere. I don't think you can walk through Boston proper and not run into some type of florist shop or flowers sold in a convenience store. Like, that's a big business. You're talking about weddings, birthdays, Valentine's Day, etc. So believe it or not, flowers. So that's another thing, guys. So the point that I'm trying to make, folks, is that we kind of need Colombia. I say this about China too. I don't know why people keep like, let's go after China and attack China. No, we kind of need these countries, okay? Because we don't produce a lot here in the United States. And hey, listen, I am all for us producing more in the U.S. I just don't think that's going to happen the way that it used to. Part of that is because of capitalism. And, CEOs found ways to make labor cheaper. And by doing so, they are able to get parts and products from other countries for a cheaper price instead of producing it here. But the $1 million question, why are we not growing our own coffee? Now, it was actually recommended on Fox News. Check this out. This is funny.
Coffee from Colombia. We actually make our own coffee here too, in Kona, in Hawaii, right? There's multiple things coming out of our neighbors' countries that aren't sort of reducible to one thing. But I think that's part of what the media has been articulating this entire time, arguing that the GOP reduces humans to an identity, but really it's them shoving these countries into boxes. President Trump sees them as partners.
Yeah, what's interesting is Trump's trying to bring about a world where he'll drop the rate for companies that actually come here and make some of that stuff to 15% tax rate. So we might not have to miss coffee or whatever they think they're going to miss that we can clearly make our own, but maybe not as much of, because maybe some of those countries will come here and they'll package their stuff or distribute it from here. He's trying
coffee from.
No, I see. They have no idea what they're talking about. First of all, yes, we make coffee in Hawaii, California, and Puerto Rico. And there's a reason why it isn't mass produced here. Let's get into this part here, right? So we can still make coffee in those places, but we can't mass produce it. And a lot of people drink coffee in this country, okay? I know, I see the line. There's a Starbucks inside one of the grocery stores that I go to, and I see the line and I'm like, people line up for the coffee, gotta have it. I used to be like that too. Gotta have my coffee. So I'm so glad I kicked that habit. But we can't produce it on a mass scale. And here's the reason why. Does coffee grow in the United States? So yeah, again, like I said, it grows in California, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico, but it's limited. And the reason why it's limited is because of this. Though most of the U.S. lies outside of the coffee belt, Puerto Rico was once a high volume producer of coffee, and Hawaii, too, has made a name for itself in coffee production, namely the world famous Kona coffee. California is a newcomer to the game and is currently not producing enough mainland grown coffee to be affordable for most. So if we were to not rely on coffee from Colombia, and we only relied on the production here in the United States, which is Hawaii, California, Puerto Rico, that would mean that coffee would be very expensive. Some of you would say it probably already is expensive, depending on where you're getting from. But the price would increase more because we can't mass produce it. Why can't we mass produce it? Because we don't have the climate for it. There's a reason why it's heavily produced in Colombia. And even with the states that I mentioned, notice the climate that those states tend to have. California, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, right? Or territory, Puerto Rico. So that's why we don't mass produce it here. We just don't have the climate for it. So we kind of do need Colombia for some of these things, you know what I mean? And we also get coffee from Africa as well. So people do have to understand that. When they make that statement on Fox News, like, oh, let's just have our own coffee, No, like, this is the thing that pisses me off about corporate media. They say things, but they don't go into the details to explain to people why we can't do these things and why we don't do them now. So when you make that statement and you say, why can't we just produce it here? That's giving Americans a false perception that we can mass produce it here and we can't. And then you're not telling the viewers that if we would only rely on the production of coffee here, then the price for coffee would greatly increase, right? So that's one of the bad things there about, again, corporate media, not giving the full context. And I think that's important for people to know. But it does appear that Colombia has decided to back away from all of this. Now, in this whole deportation news of things, there are people that are calling out to Donald Trump, asking for help. This guy here is one of them. I thought you guys would find this interesting. Florida man who voted for Trump wants to work something out with Donald Trump. This is interesting. So listen to this one.
They turned off the cameras, excuse my language, and then they took my wife. This man who wished not to be identified says his wife is from Venezuela and has lived in the United States for a few years. She was one of 3 people taken from this home. I'm told the 2 others were men who worked in construction. You see them here. This video, only a minute and 52 seconds long, we do not see his wife being removed from the home. But this is a picture of her that he keeps in his wallet. Her name is Yvonne Ramirez, and he says she was in the process of becoming a United States citizen.
She already had a court date. She was good. Everything's good. He just came in and snatched her.
These are pictures from the Department of Homeland Security detaining other undocumented men and women in Broward County.
It's despicable what they're doing right now. It's very embarrassing.
President Donald Trump arrived at his Trump National Golf Resort in Doral Saturday, set to host GOP leaders for a conference. This man hopes this message makes it to him.
So this is what's interesting about this situation. She was already, I guess she had already started the citizenship process. That's what it sounds like. But she was also deported.
I tried to talk to you, man. Yo, please, man, let's work something out. So you, man, let me keep my wife here in the United States, man. She deserves to be here, man.
ICE reports nearly 1,000 raids in the country on Sunday alone, which is up from just under 300 on Saturday. Here at the detention center in Miramar, things have been quiet for several hours, but we will continue to monitor this situation and bring you the developing news on raids in South Florida as they happen.
Wow, really interesting. I guess maybe he didn't believe when he voted for Trump, maybe he didn't believe that his wife would be affected because she was already in the citizenship process. I don't know, but I have to add this as well because I feel like a lot of people are leaving this out. Eric, we can go to part 2. I think a lot of people are leaving this part out, which is that I think that people need to realize, I'll have to talk about this more in detail on Thursday because we won't have time to get through tonight, but people need to realize the wording about U.S. citizenship and who is considered a citizen and what is considered legal, or it's tricky because the DOJ is now trying to make the claim that Native Americans may not fall under the 14th Amendment either, because they respond to the tribes first, not the jurisdiction of the United States. This is getting messy. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.